More than 3,000 years ago, in the land of the Nile, a young king ruled one of the most powerful civilizations in the world. His name was Tutankhamun. Today people call him the Boy King. His golden mask is one of the most famous objects in history, but the story of his life is far more mysterious than most people realize. Tutankhamun was born around 1341 BC during the time of the New Kingdom of Egypt. His father is widely believed by historians and archaeologists to have been the pharaoh Akhenaten. Akhenaten was a very unusual ruler who tried to completely change the religion of Egypt. For centuries Egyptians worshipped many gods such as Ammonius, Ra, and Osiris. But Akhenaten decided that the entire kingdom should worship only one god, the sun Dis-Gaten. This decision caused chaos in Egypt. Temples of the old gods were closed, priests lost their power, and many people became angry. The capital of Egypt was even moved to a completely new city built in the desert. It was a time of enormous political and religious tension. Tutankhamun grew up during this turbulent period. His childhood was likely spent inside royal palaces surrounded by servants, teachers, and guards. But life inside the palace was not peaceful. Egypt was struggling internally, and the young prince was growing up in the middle of this crisis. When Tutankhamun was only about 8 or 9 years old, he suddenly became pharaoh. A child had become the ruler of one of the greatest empires on earth. Because he was so young, real power was likely controlled by advisors and high officials. Two of the most influential figures were the Vizier I and a powerful general named Horemheb. They helped guide the kingdom while the young king grew older. One of the first major decisions during Tutankhamun's reign was the restoration of the old religion. The worship of Aten was gradually abandoned, and the temples of traditional gods such as Ammonius were reopened. This was extremely important politically because it helped calm the anger of priests and citizens who had opposed Akhenaten's radical reforms. Tutankhamun's original name had actually been Tutankhaten, which meant living image of Aten. But after the restoration of the traditional religion, his name was changed to Tutankhamun, meaning living image of Ammonius. Even his name reflected the dramatic change taking place in Egypt. Despite his royal status, evidence from modern medical research suggests Tutankhamun may not have been physically strong. CT scans of his mummy indicate he likely suffered from several health problems. His bones show signs of possible genetic disorders, which some researchers believe may have been caused by royal family intermarriage. Some studies also suggest that Tutankhamun had a club foot and may have needed a walking stick to move comfortably. Interestingly, archaeologists discovered more than 100 walking sticks inside his tomb, which supports this theory. Life for the young pharaoh was therefore probably very different from the image of a powerful warrior king that Egyptian art often showed. He may have been physically fragile, relying heavily on his advisors to manage the empire. Tutankhamun married Ankhesenamun, who was likely his half-sister. Royal marriages between close relatives were common in ancient Egyptian dynasties because they were believed to preserve the purity of the royal bloodline. Historical evidence suggests the couple had 2 daughters, but both children died very young. Their tiny mummified remains were later discovered inside Tutankhamun's tomb. Then, around 1323 BC, something unexpected happened. Tutankhamun died. He was only about 19 years old. The cause of his death remains uncertain even today. Over the past century many theories have been proposed. Some researchers once believed he may have been murdered, possibly by political rivals seeking power. However, modern medical scans have found no clear evidence of violent assassination. Another theory suggests he may have died from complications after a broken leg. CT scans show he suffered a severe fracture shortly before his death. If the wound became infected, it could have been fatal in the ancient world where medicine was limited. There is also evidence that Tutankhamun may have suffered from malaria. DNA testing conducted on his mummy revealed traces of the parasite that causes the disease. Some scientists believe a combination of illness and injury may have led to his early death. Whatever the cause, Tutankhamun's death came suddenly. Because he died so young, preparations for his burial may have been rushed. His tomb in the Valley of the Kings was relatively small compared to those of other pharaohs. But what happened thousands of years later made Tutankhamun the most famous pharaoh in the world. In 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter made one of the most important discoveries in archaeological history. After years of searching in the Valley of the Kings, he discovered a staircase hidden beneath the desert sand. The steps led to a sealed doorway bearing the royal name of Tutankhamun. For centuries tomb robbers had looted almost every royal tomb in Egypt. But Carter realized something incredible. This tomb appeared to be untouched. When Carter and his team finally opened the burial chambers, they discovered thousands of objects packed inside the rooms. Golden statues, jewelry, weapons, chariots, furniture, and ceremonial items filled the space. At the center of the burial chamber stood a massive golden coffin. Inside it was the mummy of the young king. And covering his face was the object that would become one of the most iconic artifacts in human history, the golden mask of Tutankhamun. Made from solid gold and decorated with precious stones, the mask perfectly captured the face of the young pharaoh. Today it remains one of the greatest treasures ever discovered from the ancient world. The discovery shocked the entire world. Newspapers across the globe reported the find, and suddenly Tutankhamun became a global sensation. Soon another story began spreading through newspapers. The curse of the pharaoh. After the tomb was opened, several people connected to the excavation died unexpectedly over the following years. The most famous case involved Lord Carnarvon, the financial supporter of the expedition, who died shortly after the tomb's discovery. Many newspapers claimed that a supernatural curse had been placed on the tomb to punish anyone who disturbed the pharaoh's rest. However, historians today generally consider the curse story to be exaggerated by the media. Many members of Carter's team lived long lives after the discovery. Still, the legend added another layer of mystery to the story of Tutankhamun. Today Tutankhamun remains one of the most famous figures from ancient history, not because of great battles or massive monuments, but because his tomb survived nearly intact for more than 3,000 years. His life was short, and his reign may not have been powerful. But his discovery gave the modern world an extraordinary window into the civilization of ancient Egypt. The boy king who died at 19 became immortal in history. But the story of Tutankhamun did not end with the discovery of his tomb. In fact, the moment Howard Carter opened the burial chamber in 1922, the real mystery of the young pharaoh was only beginning. The tomb itself was surprisingly small compared to those of other Egyptian rulers. Many historians believe it may not have originally been built for Tutankhamun at all. Because he died so suddenly at such a young age, priests may have had very little time to prepare a proper royal burial. Inside the tomb Carter and his team discovered 4 separate chambers filled with more than 5,000 artifacts. Every object told a story about life, religion, and power in ancient Egypt. There were golden statues of gods meant to protect the king in the afterlife. There were chariots that Tutankhamun may have used during ceremonies or hunts. There were jewelry pieces made from gold, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and other precious materials. Even ordinary objects such as sandals, clothing, and food containers were placed in the tomb. Egyptians believed the pharaoh would need all these items in the next world. But the most extraordinary part of the burial was the series of coffins protecting the mummy. Tutankhamun's body was placed inside 3 coffins, one inside another like nested boxes. The outer coffins were richly decorated with gold and intricate carvings. The innermost coffin, however, was made of solid gold and weighed more than 100 kilograms. Inside that coffin lay the mummy of the young king. His face was covered by the famous golden mask. The mask is made of more than 11 kilograms of gold and decorated with colored glass and precious stones. It represents Tutankhamun as a divine ruler, wearing the traditional striped Nemes headdress and the cobra and vulture symbols of royal protection. For many people around the world, this mask became the symbol of ancient Egypt itself. However, the discovery of the tomb also created many new questions. Why was the tomb so small? Why did such a famous pharaoh seem to have such a modest burial place? Some archaeologists believe Tutankhamun was not originally expected to become pharaoh. His rise to power may have been sudden after the death of previous rulers. Because of this, his tomb might have been prepared quickly using a chamber that was originally intended for someone else. Another mystery involves the political situation after his death. Tutankhamun left no surviving heirs. This created a power struggle in Egypt. His advisor I eventually became pharaoh, but his rule did not last long. Soon after, the powerful general Horemheb took control of the throne. Horemheb began a campaign to erase the memory of the controversial period associated with Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. Many monuments and inscriptions connected to them were destroyed or altered. Ironically, this attempt to erase Tutankhamun from history may have helped preserve his tomb. Because later generations tried to forget his reign, his burial site remained hidden and largely undisturbed for more than 3,000 years. Another famous part of the story is the legend of the curse of the pharaoh. Shortly after the tomb was opened, newspapers around the world began reporting mysterious events. Lord Carnarvon, the British nobleman who financed the excavation, died only a few months after entering the tomb. His death sparked rumors that a supernatural curse had been unleashed. Some newspapers claimed there had been a warning inside the tomb saying, "Death will come on swift wings to those who disturb the king's peace." However, modern historians say there is no clear evidence that such a curse inscription actually existed. Many people involved in the excavation lived long and healthy lives, including Howard Carter himself, who died more than 15 years later. The curse story was likely exaggerated by journalists looking for dramatic headlines. Still, the legend became one of the most famous archaeological myths in history. Today Tutankhamun's treasures are preserved in museums in Egypt, and millions of people from around the world come to see them. The young king who ruled for less than 10 years became the most famous pharaoh in human history. Not because of military victories. Not because of great monuments. But because his tomb remained hidden beneath the sands of Egypt for more than 30 centuries, waiting to tell its story to the modern world. Tutankhamun lived only 19 years. Yet his legacy has lasted more than 3,000. And in many ways, the mystery of the boy king still continues.